Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. Back in the shop. You know, we love being back in the shop. So we got a lot of stuff to do. And, I usually don't do a mosh on a Friday, but, there's just too many things. So we're going to hit a couple things. And first thing I want to talk about, I just was upstate and I had to mow the lawn. I got a nice lawn upstate, about an acre and a half. And it requires a lot of work to keep it nice, but I enjoy it, and I enjoy the riding tractor. And I had to do a tune-up. I do that every 2 years, regardless how many hours I have. And it made me think about spark plugs. And a lot of people here, are old-timers, and we go back to the days when we used to take out spark plugs and clean them. And it was a lot of fun, and it took, it's funny, today people just replace them, don't even think about it, but, plugs, a lot of times plugs are replaced and they're not even worn out. Let me show you some ways to save some money. Now, I have a nice collection of spark plugs I've been collecting for a long time. I just find them amazing, but let me tell you a little bit about the spark. This is NGK brand. Now, they come out of Japan, but these are made in Brazil. But it's a Japanese company, you can see here. And they make great spark plugs, but that's a lot of ones that come with the tune-up kits for the particular tractor I was working on. These are smaller plugs you could see here. And you can see this plug is in, I just pulled these out, uncleaned. I'm going to show you how to clean them. And over here, if you look at the tip. Now, if you look at the tip here, you have what's known as your grounding electrode. That's this arm that bends over here. That's your grounding electrode. And the little tip that runs down the center of the spark plug, that's your center electrode. And there's a porcelain insulator that insulates the two from touching all the time until the power is given to the spark plug, and that's what creates the spark between this gap. Now that gap has to be measured, and a lot of times they come pre-gapped, but a lot of times certain engines will require a specific gap. To set the gap of a spark plug, you would read what it says according to the specifications for the motor. A lot of them are around 30 thousandths of an inch, 26, something like that, but you try and get as close as you can. Now, this is an old type of a round type disc gap, spark plug gapper, and what you would do is you would take it here, the thinnest part, and you would put it over here and slide it until you can't go anymore, and then you could read it there. And you could see this one reads at about 27 thousandths of an inch. Now, if you wanted to open that up, there's a little hole here, and you would take your spark plug arm there, put it into the hole, and you would just slightly bend this up if you wanted to get a larger gap. If you wanted to get a smaller gap, you could just tap it down. Now, years ago, to do this job, we used to use what's called a feeler gauge. And feeler gauges are a bunch of different gauges stacked together, and they're written in thousandths of an inch. This you can see is 11 thousandths, 12 thousandths. Now, let's say we had to do a spark plug at 31 thousandths, and this one only goes up to 24. What you would do is you would couple two of these together. So you take these two, you got 15 and 16 thousandths. That would be 31 thousandths. And you would couple them together, and that's how you would use this. Now, just to check, I'm going to use a caliper here, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to put it on here, squeeze it together, and you can see it's 31 thousandths of an inch. So that's how you would use, that's how we used to use and do the spark plug gapping. And then you would slip this in here to measure your gap. It's a very accurate way of doing it, and this is the preferred way. When I was a kid, I bought this nifty spark plug cleaner, and you can see how this works. You put your air hose here, there's a little button here, and all it does is it shoots air up, and here is the abrasive. And the abrasive, you buy it in a little container here. It's and you can see it's 60 to 80 grit. You pour some in the bag, and what you do is, I have a ball here just to stop any dust or debris from going in there. You would take your spark plug, and there's a little rubber. See that little rubber kind of gasket there? You would just place your spark plug in here, hold it down, press the button here, and it would go psh, and it would clean the plug. Now, I thought that was the cat's pajamas back then, because in essence, it was just like a sandblaster sandblasting this area. The problem is, just like a sandblaster, it left these little microscopic pits, and carbon and things like that would form in there. So I found out real quick that I wasn't a big fan of the blaster, and I didn't use it too much. I went back to my father's method of using the wire brush. Now to prep the spark plug to go on a wire brush, taking a little piece of aluminum tin can, a beverage can, cut a small piece like this, place it against the edge here, and wrap this piece of tape around the porcelain. And that's just to start it. That's just to hold it, because now what you're going to do is you're going to twist the can like this around here, and then take another piece of tape and hold it down. Just like that. Finished and ready for the wire brush, it should look like that. There's no way that you can hit the porcelain with the wire brush now, and you can get in nice and close. And we'll take it to the wire brush and just clean off this white oxidation that comes from sitting. And we'll also hit some of the tip here. And I'm going to use the soft wire brush. Okay, we're done, and look at them. They look brand new, and I don't have a lot of hours on these. You know, they say change them every 200 hours. I might have 50 hours, 60 hours on these plugs, so you could see that there's really nowhere to speak. I changed them early. I just do it every year. Now, but I do keep these, and I will put these in a box, and we'll mark used on them, because you can't really tell. They look so new, right? But if you did have a problem with the electrode, especially here, the center electrode here, if you see that electrode is a little bit conical, you know, rounded off or not flat, or it doesn't look right, what you do is you take your pair of Swiss pattern files. These are nice. These are a pair of diamond Swiss pattern files I have, but you can get them really cheap. And take a flat file like this one here, and what you would do is you would put the spark plug in a vise and gently pry up the grounded electrode here, and then file down to make flat the center electrode. Make it nice and flat. Once it's flat, then you re-gap the spark plug and you're good to go. You know, this is things that our grandfathers knew, and you know, that's what saved them from going out and buying plugs all the time. But until these plugs start giving you problems in this sporadic firing or something, they hold up a long time. I just got rid of a lawnmower that had the same spark plug in for 30 years. So just think about it. I just cleaned it every year, and I made sure the electrode was good. So spark plugs, something interesting. Okay, next up, a good friend of the show, Alex Schuenberg, had asked about the planks that I use, and he sees the background on a lot of tools and asked me how I did or got that. And let me show you something interesting. I did this before on the channel, but I'm just going to go over it real quick. Now, a lot of us collect vises, you know, and I have found, for me, the best thing for vises when you collect them is to I go and I get a 2x8, and I look every once in a while. I'll give a look at the section, the lumber section, when I go to Home Depot or something, and I'll look to see what kind of lumber they get in. Sometimes they get some nice stuff, and you'll find, like here, this is a 2x8. Now, don't be confused. A 2x8 is not 2x8 inches. The dimensional, when you buy a lumber, if you wanted a 2x4, a 2x4 used to be 2 inches by 4 inches, but now a 2x4 is 1.5 by 3.5. So, and that's because what happens is they measure it before they dry it. So they might cut it at 2x4, but once they dry it, it shrinks down, and that's the finished dimensions. A 2x8 is actually 7 inches by 1.5 inches. Okay, you can see there, 1.5 inches. So that's a 2x8. So what I'll do is, when I see a nice example of a 2x8 without too many knots, like this one here, you could see it's a pretty nice example, no knots and things like that. So I'll buy this, and then I'll cut it down into about 14-inch sections, and then I will stain them. So I'll cut up maybe 4 or 5 of these, you know, and I'll do it at once because it's so much easier. I'll put maybe a 15-degree on the chop saw, cut maybe a 15-degree angle at the end or something like that, just so it looks okay. And then what I'll do is I'll stain it, give it a quick stain, and then I'll give it a couple coats of varnish. I like varnish. I thin it out, and I just put it on with a rag, and it goes 1, 2, 3. But the reason I like the thick one like this is because here's a perfect example of a vise I mounted here on one. Because when you're mounting the bolts on a board, you need to have something that you could countersink or counterbore the holes so that they're not, you could put the board flat and you don't have to worry about the bolts protruding into your surface. So, you just counterbore 3 holes like this, and this way you could put the nuts and the washers in there, and that will hold the vise nicely onto here. And then you could just clamp this onto any surface that you have. My preference for stains, I always like Minwax, and not everybody sells it. Home Depot stopped selling it, but I look for it, and this is what I like. I like Minwax. I've been working with it. I know how it reacts. Now, what happens in the early times, I used to look for the color stain that I wanted. I could never find something that was just what I liked. So what I used to do is I used to buy different color stains and mix them. And then, until I would get the right combination of the stain I wanted, which looked very much like this. Until about 5 years now ago, they came out with Gunstock. The Gunstock is the color I love. This is like just what I've been looking for. This is my go-to stain. This is what I use now all the time. Gives you a nice warm look. Works on all different woods, whether it be pine. This is a type of pine, or it might be a Douglas fir, something that they use for construction wood or whatever, but it comes out the same. A Gunstock is a really good, nice looking finish for me that I like. So I put that on, and then I finish it up with varnish, and I get this varnish here. It's a Helmsman, and it's a spar urethane, but it's clear gloss, and it's UV resistant. You can use it, partly outside. I never do, but what's nice about this is I thin it out. It says do not thin out. I don't listen to that. I thin it out. What I do is I take about 60% varnish, about 40% odorless mineral spirits, mix it up. It comes out very thin, and then I just take a rag, an old sock, and I wipe it on. I don't use any brush or anything. It absorbs right into the wood, and after about 2 or 3 coats, you get a nice finish, very durable because it's sucked into the wood. So that's my go-to for these small planks. Okay, for our last segment, a good friend of the show, Mark McKenzie out of Windsor, Colorado. Mark, he's been on multiple episodes, good friend of the show, and Mark is making his whole new shop, and he's got everything cleaning up and new equipment coming in, so he had to get rid of some of his equipment that he wasn't going to be using soon. And he sent some this way to the show and a few things, so let's check it out. Mark sent this nice Weir wrench. This is a bung wrench, and I have a barrel upstate that has the square top to it, and I did need a wrench for it, and this is perfect because it'll fit that. Next, he sent a couple nice stones here. These are DeWalt 8-inch stones. Now, a lot of people don't have the proper equipment to spin these kind of stones. First of all, as you can see, they're thick. They're 1-inch stones, and they're quite heavy. And at 8-inch, again, you can't be spinning this. You don't want to spin this on a 3,400 RPM grinder, because it'll build up heat so fast and things like that. So I have a slow speed grinder that's just perfect for these stones. But the thing we're going to be doing today that Mark sent was pretty interesting. We don't have too many tools from Russia. And this one here, he actually picked this up when he was in Russia. And you can see here, I don't know if anybody can make out what this stands for, what these markings mean. You can see here, I don't even know how to put them so they're sitting up straight or right, I don't know. But there's some kind of markings on here. And again, big forged lines here. Russia's never known for having fit and finish tools. And this is no exception, because if you look here, it's kind of off-centered, and you can see here it's kind of curves to the right a little bit that way. And if you look here, the casting, it's, again, they're done. It's even, I don't even know which kind of finish you would call it. But we don't get too many tools from Russia, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and make this look somewhat presentable. It's a nice little size pliers, but it's Russian. Maybe they're made for some kind of toolkit or something, and we'll see what we can do with the handles and stuff like that. It's really pretty rough, so let's see what we can do. Now you know what these pliers look like before we started. We're calling this project done, and all we did was just cleaned it up a little bit. This was, these Russian pliers, or this brand or whatever, very strange. I never seen anything like it, but like I said, it's a nice little size, and took off all the corners that, you know, it's a nice finished pliers in your hand, and took off all the forging lines on the inside. And here's what that lettering is again. I didn't touch it with any sanding so that you could, you know, it would remain. So I don't know what that means. Maybe somebody here can tell. But anyway, Mark, thanks very much. And this is Russia represented here for the first time. And I tried to get a grind on the handles here. I've never seen anything like it before. It's like they popped it out of the forging, put it together, and put it on this. I don't think there was ever any kind of grind or anything on here to try and smooth it out. But anyway, that's pretty cool. Mark, I hope you have a story behind these, because I'd be interested to know. All right, everybody, thanks very much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a nice day. Take care now. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.